if you do ever want to sell something online, just keep an eye out because those scammers will really get you. Hi, welcome back to Off the Hook Crochet with Nicole, and today we are doing one of our crochet and chats. And if that's the kind of thing that you like and you enjoy, then stay tuned. I've got a lot to share while I work on my latest project, which is the Jasper Easy Mesh Summer Crochet Top. And while it does have summer in the title, this is probably designed to go over something else. And here in Arizona, we have a lot of months that we can wear this. And so I thought it was something that would be a great little versatile, kind of more seasonal thing. I can wear it in the fall and not worry too much about it. Just a little bit of extra weight, but since I'm going to be wearing it over a tank top, but not so much that I get really warm. Given that, it is September and we are still hitting 110 plus degrees here. It is insane.
I understand it's a dry heat.
You may notice this yarn. This is the yarn that I was using for the Orange Blossom tank top. It's the 24/7 DK Sparkle in the color Truffle. And I was using it for that Orange Blossom top, but I gotta say, I frogged it 3, maybe even 4 times. And at that point in time, I just sort of got to the point where I'm like, you know what? This is enough for right now. I'm gonna just put this pattern on hold and work on something fresh and new, and I can come back to that one later. Because I was getting tired of doing the single crochet, single crochet, single crochet over and over and over and over and over again. So I just frogged it, and I wasn't getting the size right. Even though I had done the gauge and the gauge was accurate way back when, I think that it had been so long between when I first started working on it and where I was at that point that I just don't think that it was working out well for me overall. So, sometimes we just have to take a look at things and say, you know what? I'm not going to work on this one right now. I'm going to find something better to do. And so I found this one. This is actually a free pattern. And I will, of course, share that in the show notes below. Or if I don't, because I've been noticing that sometimes I'm not sharing those. If I don't share that, just send me a comment and I'll send you the link for sure. Absolutely happy to do that if I ever forget to share something in the actual description. Anyway, so I started this one, and when I started it, my thought process was that I was going to use all the truffle. And I'm like, you know what? I really want to start doing some color work. I want to start doing some things that have a little bit more variety, a little bit more spice to them, and not just solid colors that are, I mean, they're nice patterns and they're easy, but the way that I sort of look at doing garments, you have a choice. I have a choice. I'm going to keep it up to me. I can either do a pattern that is a little bit more detailed, has a little bit more technical sort of creative stitch work to it, or I can use colors on a more simple basic pattern. And either way, I'm getting something that is more visually appealing than just a solid color basic pattern. And because I have all of this amazing scrap yarn, I don't want to call it scrap because most of it's not really scrap, but not large quantities of yarn that my mother-in-law gave me to work with. I had some of this Valley yarns. This is, what is it called? It is called Granville. Valley Yarns Granville. And this is the color Coral. And so I had some of this. I have about 350 yards of this in my stash. And I thought, well, if I alternate between the coral and the truffle, that will give something that gives a little bit more detail, a little bit more, it's not just kind of this pattern is nice, but it's pretty basic, and so I wanted something that was going to challenge me a little bit without overly challenging me. I guess that's really what it was. I wanted something that was a little bit more challenging, but not something that I was going to have to be looking down at a pattern constantly to figure out, okay, what do I do next? And that's where the color work comes in, because then I can just change the color every few rows. I basically have a pattern repeat here where it's 2 rows of one type of stitch and then 2 rows of another type of stitch. And you just repeat that every 4 rows. Basically, I'm changing colors. So that's my goal. And I really think this is a beautiful color combination. I was a little concerned about it initially because the truffle has a ribbon that runs through it, and the ribbon has a little bit more of a purple color to it. It's a metallic purple. So I was thinking I really needed to go with something that was purple, but I didn't. I either had too much or too little, or the purples that I have were not quite the right type of yarn. So it might be like a worsted, or it might be something that is more of a fancier yarn. And I really wanted just kind of a basic cotton, something that wasn't going to be complex. And it needed to be, kind of because this is a DK. And actually, even though it's a DK, I think, in my opinion, it's probably closer to a sport weight yarn. And this sport weight that is the Granville, I feel is actually closer to a DK. So it kind of worked out. The Granville is listed as a sport weight. The 24/7 cotton is listed as a DK, because this is the DK one. And I think they're actually kind of the opposite, in my opinion. But I do think that it works here. I think that using them both together, and I don't think that the purple shows enough to really throw anything off. So I actually almost think that the metallic stripe in here kind of picks up a little bit of the coral, and that purple kind of becomes a little bit more coral like. So I think it works really well, in my personal opinion, anyway. So, when I was looking at this and I was kind of trying to figure out, there were a few things that I needed to pick up recently. And so I was going to go to Hobby Lobby, and there's one that I used to go to on a regular basis near where my crochet slash knit group would get together every week. During the summer, we all kind of go in our own directions, so we don't get together during the summer months. We'll get together again starting in mid-October, I think. But over the summer months, we all sort of go in our own directions and don't gather at that time. So I have not been to that Hobby Lobby in in a few months. I was off on the road, and even if I was not, it is further away from my house than other Hobby Lobbies. But it was right across the street from where we used to get together. So that was my go-to location. I would go in there before we would meet for lunch, or sometimes if I figured out during lunch, oh, I really need to get this, then I would pick it up afterwards. But it was literally right across the street, and so convenient. Sometimes if I just had extra time to kill, I'd just go in and browse, and usually end up buying something. But I needed to stop in, and I was actually in that very area the other day. And I was so sad to find out that that location had closed down. I was so bummed because it was so convenient and I just loved going there. And now, I mean, there is a Michael's just down the street, but I don't like Michaels as much. In fact, if I had to kind of rate the top three sort of local ones, Michaels, Joann's, and Hobby Lobby. Hobby Lobby would be my preference because I love this cotton and I love this yarn. Those are my two favorite to use. And Joann's would be my second favorite, and then Michaels. For whatever reason, when I go into a Michaels, I just never quite find anything exciting. I don't use the mandalas. I don't use the cakes that much, although I did pick up a couple. So those things generally don't appeal to me, and Michaels doesn't tend to have a lot of the kind of yarns that I like to use, whereas Hobby Lobby and Joann's do have more of a selection in that sort of category. So I really think it's all just what you prefer. But my point there is that there is a Michaels right there, but it's not the Hobby Lobby. And granted, there are two other Hobby Lobbies within a 10-mile radius of that location, and maybe that's why that one in particular closed down, because there was enough saturation there that they didn't feel like they needed to have it. Although it is a very commercial area, and in fact, the mall used to be right across the street. The mall has been since turned into like apartments and condos and multi-use type facilities, as they're doing with many of the malls nowadays.
The mall's gone?
But there's still a lot of shopping in that area. So I still think that it could have well, I guess my opinion is I would have liked to have still had one there, but I'm not the business owner. I'm not the one making those financial decisions, so I don't get a say in that one for sure. But I was very disappointed to find out that that was closed. I I don't know about you. I much prefer doing my yarn shopping at local locations because I'm very touchy feely. I like to see what the yarn feels like. If it's even remotely rough and scratchy, then it might not work for various projects. I mean, obviously, like I do use Lily Sugar and Cream, which is definitely one of the more coarse type cottons, but there are a lot of really soft cottons out there too. And so I want to feel what it feels like. And in addition to that, I sometimes have a hard time comparing to see if this color is going to work with that color unless I can set them next to each other. If I have to look at them on a monitor, it's much more difficult for me to say, well, I really like these four colors for a blanket. I'm not that good at being able to analyze the color differences and say these colors are going to work together unless I can put them side by side. And I can't always do that. But I did challenge myself, and today I made my very first purchase at Hobie. And some people call it hobby. It's actually funny. There is a video short on how the people that work there pronounce it, and there is some variation. So I'm just going to go with Hobie. I think Hobie is how they pronounce hobby in that, like, I think it's from Denmark, but I'm not sure where they're from. They're not American. It's not an American company. So however they pronounce hobby with that sort of accent that they have, I think that's how they pronounce it. So hobby, I think, is basically what it's meant to be. So hobby or hobie is what you'll probably end up hearing me call it. But anyway, I made my first purchase there, and I purchased a few different, probably like 5 different types of yarn, because I want to kind of see what they have and see what it's like, and just kind of get a little bit more familiar with it. I also really want to find out how long does it take them to ship things? It's I looked at a lot of different websites from hobby and yarn inspirations and Lovecraft and Webs, a lot of those different yarn companies online. And one of the things that I noticed, and maybe it's because I was looking kind of right at the end of the Labor Day period, but most of the yarns, they only had a color selection of maybe four or five because the rest of them were sold out. And so I'd go in and I'd go looking for this color selection and I'd have like four or five options out of like 30. And I'm like, well, that's kind of a bummer. So, that was kind of discouraging. And I thought, well, that's not much fun. And decided to look at hobby. And hobby seemed to have still, even though some of them were sold out, they still seem to have a really good color selection overall. So that's the one that I ended up going with. I'll probably experiment with Lovecraft and some of the other ones just to see, again, what shipping time is like, what the quality of yarn is, and see if I can kind of get over this idea of having to purchase yarns locally, since even Hobby Lobby doesn't have a lot in the fingering or the DK selection. DK, they have a little bit more sock, and fingering, the selections are minimal. And that's a lot of what I use for things like the garments. So unless I want to go to a local yarn shop, which I'm not opposed to, but oftentimes the prices on that yarn is very, very expensive. And while I do love supporting them occasionally, I also am pretty budget conscious.
Yeah, she's cheap. Cheap lady.
So while I can afford to spend a little bit extra on yarn, I choose not to, because then I can buy more yarn. If I buy two skeins at $25 each, I could have bought, maybe six skeins at $5 each and come out ahead. So it's what I do is I kind of weigh that, and then what I'll do, I'll take some of these really pretty yarns and pair it with a solid color that is not as expensive, and then use this as like an accent color, either in stripes like this, or maybe just as the top piece or something like that, so that as I kind of start to experiment with some of this coloring and I have some of these beautiful yarns, I can still use them, but I don't have to use it for an entire garment, because I'm not a big fan of scarves or shawls, because I don't use them. Even if it were cold, it's not the kind of thing that I would use. I would be more inclined to wear a jacket or a sweater than I would be a scarf or a shawl. And scarves, I just don't like things around my neck. Even this shirt is like a little bit. Um, so I'm just not going to be making scarves, and I'm probably not going to be making too many shawls. I think they're gorgeous. I absolutely think they're gorgeous. But since I'm not going to wear them, there's too many other things that I can make that are beautiful. Yikes, I got a tangle here. Oh dear, we got a tangle here. All right, orange, coral, whatever, get out of my way. Get out of my way, girlfriend. Okay. Yeah, so that's, we'll see. We'll see. And I'll share my results. I'll share what I think. And if I love them, I will for sure let you know. And then you can decide if you want to do something with that. Boy, I really feel like that last row was a little loose on my tension, so I got to watch that. So I got my first scam request the other day. I don't know what to think about that. I think it's actually kind of comical. So if you're not familiar with these, if you post anything on, like, especially like Instagram, you are very likely to get, even if you're not trying to sell it, even if you're just sharing it. I shared my beach bag that I made, and you can catch that on my August recap video. I shared it on Instagram, and within maybe 5 minutes of sharing it, I had two people reaching out to me asking if they could buy it, if it was still for sale. I didn't post that it was for sale. I never posted that it was for sale. I was just sharing that I had made it. And they were asking if it was for sale. So that was, of course, the they weren't asking if it was for sale. They were phrasing it as such that it was for sale and was it still available. So that was the first red flag. So of course, instead of saying, hey, that's a really beautiful piece, I was wondering if you would consider selling it, it was, is this still available for sale? Well, it was never available for sale. So my first response is no. But sometimes I like to have fun with them, and I just like to, even if it's telemarketers, I sometimes have a good time, just pulling their legs and taking up their time because they're taking up my time. So why not have fun with it? And so I sort of asked a few questions to see where it would go, and a couple of the things that you can be aware of to know that these are scams. They're always going to ask your location. Where are you located? And it does not matter what you answer. You can say the depths of hell or high up in heaven or Hogwarts, and they're still going to say, okay, great, I can't pick that up, but will you ship it to me? And then, you kind of get in, everything's like, oh yeah, sure, no problem, I can ship it to you. And then it gets to the payment conversation, and they always ask, and I forget exactly what it is because I never quite get that far. Oops, I only need two there. Chain two. They get to the point where they want to do payment, but it doesn't go through. So they ask you to switch to a different platform or something like that. Or, whatever, for whatever reason, they don't want to do it the way that you have it set up, because they're a business account or you're a business account or whatever it is. And so they're trying to get you to switch, and that's where the scam comes in, because if you switch, then they're going to have you send them some money, but then because they sent you too much money, and it's just a bad thing. So really keep an eye out if you do ever want to sell something online. Just keep an eye out, because those scammers will really get you. There's a lot of groups on Reddit and Facebook where you can go and you can kind of share the interaction, the engagement, and ask whether or not everybody else thinks that this is a scam. And if ever in doubt, I would highly, highly recommend that you do that, that you check in with others and share those conversations to see if they feel like it's a scam, because a lot of them have been around a lot longer and they've seen it all. So definitely just do a double check if you're unsure in any form or fashion. Better safe than sorry, for sure. But sometimes it's fun to have fun with them, because otherwise it just feels like a waste of time. So instead of it feeling like a waste of your time, turn it around and have a little fun, right? Because that's what life is all about. Having some fun now and then. We are rocking and rolling on this. I've got to get to about 17 inches, I think, on this panel. This is the back panel, and then I'm going to flip it around, and I'm going to do another one, and that will be the front panel. And then it's a pretty much just kind of a straight across stitch. There's not a very formal sort of neckline. I think it's called a boat neck. Not positive, but I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. So it won't be a fancy neckline. It'll be pretty easy to do once I get there. Gosh darn it, this is getting all tangled. It's just getting all tangled. I did wind it, but for whatever reason, it just doesn't want to stay untangled. I can see what's happening. It's like there's a middle section that it keeps wrapping around here. And so if I pull all of that out, maybe it'll be untangled. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. So I was talking to my son recently about goals. He is taking a program that is all about, kind of health and wellness and that kind of thing. And one of the things that they talk about is I think he said it's 7 areas of life that you can evaluate and see how each of these areas how you're doing in each of these areas. Now, I have in a prior life done a lot of life coaching. I have a degree in psychology. So this is kind of an area that I just totally jones out on. And, we get to talking about all this kind of stuff. And he's like, Mom, you taught me 90% of this. Most of this is not new to me. And I said, good. Well, it's a good refresher for you. It's good validation that what you already know is true and accurate. And it helps you to build some stronger habits around those things. Consider it an easy A, and we'll go on from there. But he was talking about how each of the areas he evaluated himself, and he goes, I'm not horrible on any of these, and I'm also not fabulous on any of these. I'm kind of just middle of the road on most of them. I feel like there's something that I can do to work on all of them. And yet none of them are so bad off that I'm like, oh my gosh, this is where I got to start. He goes, and I feel completely overwhelmed because I feel like I got so much work to do. And this is a common sort of thing when I was doing a lot of my life coaching, is that concern and that overwhelm of feeling like you've got so far to go. And there's so many things that you want to do to improve and work on for yourself. Where do you even begin? And how do you keep from getting so totally overwhelmed that you just throw your hands up in the air and say, yeah, I'm done with this? And so I was sharing with him some of the insights that I'd learned and that I've shared with my clients in the past. And that's to not try and focus on everything. Instead, pick 2 or 3 areas that you really, really, really want to prioritize. Just 2 or 3, not every one of them. And then instead of just saying, okay, well, I want to focus on my finances, and I want to focus on losing weight, and I want to focus on my relationships, if you just kind of go from that angle, you're really not going to make a lot of forward momentum, because each decision that you make can create a back pedal in and of itself. So as you move forward in one area, that movement can actually pull back another area, and then vice versa. So let me kind of illustrate that for you, what I'm talking about here. Let's say, for example, your 3 goals: getting out of debt, losing weight, and really building some solid relationships with your family and friends. So one day you are faced with the decision, or the option, the opportunity to join a gym. And you're looking at the idea of joining the gym. You're like, oh, well, that's a pretty good idea. I really want to lose weight, so I'll go ahead and I'll join a gym. Well, when you join the gym, that's going to cost you a monthly fee every single month. And so every month, that's going to pull you away from your goal of getting out of debt. It's going to prevent that from happening. So choosing to join the gym might work for one goal, but it's going to work against another goal. And then let's say your friends invite you out for dinner one night, and you're like, oh, that sounds great. I really want to work on building my friendships. So I want to spend more time with them. I think this is a great opportunity for me to do that. But by doing that, you could potentially be sabotaging both your financial getting out of debt goal and your weight loss goal, because maybe you know that you're not going to eat the healthiest when you're eating out with your friends. So therefore, doing that is actually going to pull you back in the wrong direction of both of those other two goals that you have. So what's the solution to this? I mean, oh my gosh, we're never going to get anywhere, right? If we're just constantly making rash decisions, and those decisions, while they seem like good ideas for one goal, they could totally be sabotaging a different goal. The solution here is to determine your priorities. And while you can focus on multiple goals at one time, you have to decide which ones are the top priorities and which ones are your secondary priorities, etc. So, for example, if you decide that getting out of debt is your first priority, no matter what, you want to focus on getting out of debt. And then your second priority is going to be losing weight. And your third priority is your relationships. Not that any one of those is less important than the other. It's just that you've decided this is how you want to tackle those and in what order. So they're all very important goals, but you can't focus on everything all at once. So you have to choose one. So we're going to prioritize getting out of debt first, which means when it comes time to consider whether or not you want to join that gym, the answer has to be no, because my first priority is to get out of debt. And if I join this gym, I'm going to have a monthly fee that is going to prevent me from doing that. So that's your first option. And then you say, okay, so how do I find ways that I can stay out of debt or work to get out of debt and work on my health and fitness at the same time? And so that might be finding things to do that are outdoors, or hiking, or getting some YouTube videos and doing some exercises with those. Finding an accountability partner, somebody that you can work with, that you're not paying to do that, but just kind of a buddy system type approach, which then kind of leads into your next one, which is those relationships. Maybe somebody that you are friends with also wants to work on their health and fitness, and so you can really work to build your relationship with them while building the health and fitness and not hurting your desire to get out of debt. So, by prioritizing those goals, it helps you to make decisions in a way that's not going to keep you turning in the wrong direction, that's not going to keep you backpedaling when you make one decision and then you make a different decision for a different goal that is counter to that other one. So I shared this with him and he thought it was a great idea, but he's like, but mom, I have all of these things that I want to work on. And when I'm trying to focus on just two or three of them, they're all still kind of coming up. And that is a big challenge that he's not the only one that's plagued with that. So I don't care if you're like, oh, someday I want to learn how to play the guitar, and that's sitting in the back of your head. Or maybe for those of us, it's, oh, someday I want to learn Tunisian crochet, or someday I want to learn mosaic crochet. It's sitting there in the back of your mind and taking up space.
You're taking up too much of my brain space.
And this is where the problem comes in. It's not that you can consciously decide, I don't want to do that right now, but there's a part of you that's like, oh my gosh, if I don't keep thinking about this periodically, I'm going to totally forget about it. And so I have to keep expending energy and brain power to make sure that I don't forget that someday I want to do that. So here's the solution that has been very effective for a lot of people, not everybody, but for a lot of people. And that's to create what's called a someday maybe list. Someday, maybe you'll get around to these things. It's a list of things that it's kind of like a bucket list of, I want to do these things. And by having it written down someplace, whether that's a physical paper journal or a digital storage location, I use a lot of programs like Notion or Trello for that kind of thing, or even a whiteboard. I've got my whiteboard over here. You can probably just see the corner of it, but on there I have my someday maybe list of all the places that we want to go RV. And that just helps us to easily and quickly say, let's see, let's pick the next place we want to go, without having to think too hard and try and remember, oh yeah, we need to still go up to, the northern part of Michigan. And someday we want to go down to Louisiana, not during the summer when we usually get to go though. It's just a way to keep those things in a place that's organized so you can reference it if and when you choose to, but that isn't taking up space in your brain. And I got to tell you, I've used this method many, many, many times, and I find it extremely beneficial. It's also this similar to the idea that if you wake up in the middle of the night and you can't turn your brain off, write those things down, because part of the reason you can't turn your brain off is because you're afraid if you go back to sleep, you're going to forget all of those things. So if you just take a few moments to get up, write them down, then you can go back to sleep. Of course, I tell you that I'm not very good at doing that. So I have had many nights where I just agonized over not being able to get back to sleep. And even though I wasn't an anxious person, for whatever reason, I had a lot of things going on in my mind and I could not turn them off. I mean, honestly, it could be things like what projects I want to work on for my crochet. Not something that I need to be worrying about by any means. It's just I get into those modes. I think we all have a little bit of those challenges now and then. And if you're enjoying this, make sure that you like and subscribe and mark the bell for the notifications. On Tuesdays I do tip videos, and on Sundays I put out my chats. It doesn't matter which ones you like, you can get all of those, or you can get just the ones that really work best for you and watch and hang out with me as we do a little work on our projects. I don't think that you can hear it at all, but I am on the main floor of my house in my office, and right below my office is our gym in our basement. And yes, I live in Arizona, and yes, I have a basement, and yes, that is very rare for Arizonans to have basements, but we are the exception to that rule. So in our basement downstairs, we have a gym right underneath my office. And my husband is down there working out right now. And I can tell because we have a TV in there, and he turns the volume way up so that he can hear it over the treadmill when he's walking on the treadmill or running on the treadmill, especially when he's running on the treadmill, because the faster you run, the louder the treadmill gets. And so he turns the TV way up, and I can actually hear it up here. I don't think you can hear it. I don't think the microphone is sensitive enough to pick that up, but I find it fascinating that I get to listen to his TV while I'm recording my videos, for sure. I get to go tomorrow, and I have a hip issue right now. So I'm going to be going to an orthopedic doctor and having that looked at. I'm pretty sure it's just a little bit of arthritis, but it is a dull chronic pain. And sitting in this sort of 90-degree position can get very painful, or doing any sort of fast walking. So if I'm walking at a normal pace, it doesn't bother me. There's always a chronic dull ache there, but it starts to really hurt if I am sitting in this position for too long, or if I'm doing a fast pace. Now, if I sit kind of at a, a steeper angle, I don't know, is that like a 180 degree? I don't know my angles very good. Math is not my area of expertise. Um, but if I'm at a steeper angle and almost closer to laying flat, it does not cause me as much pain. And I keep telling my husband I'm using that as an excuse to sit on the couch because I can recline on the couch. We have a recliner on there and crochet without causing my hip pain. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. But tomorrow I will be going to the orthopedic, and I'm guessing he's just going to tell me that it's some arthritis and give me a cortisone shot. I'm not in deadly excruciating pain, but it is definitely constantly there. And I'm kind of over that just chronic, low grade, dull ache that never, ever goes away. So I'm hoping that whatever he suggests, even if it's just a cortisone shot, takes care of that for the time being. Getting old. My husband always says it's not the age, it's the miles. I think it's the genetics. He's got better genetics than I do. My mother has always had really bad arthritis and just challenges overall. And I think that apple didn't fall very far from that tree. Thank you very much. Remember to like and subscribe, and I will talk to you on Tuesday with another awesome tip. I wonder what it's going to be. We're going to have to wait and find out because I am not sure what is up in the rotation at the moment. We will talk to you next week.